Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Westside Congregation in Rio Rancho. If you have just discovered us online, we welcome you. Please explore our website and Facebook page and contact us if you would like more information. If you are part of our ongoing community, welcome back. Our thanks to everyone for joining us for this program. Our title today is Caste in America. Reverend Judy Deutsch will be sharing her experience of reading the book by this title, written by Isabel Wilkerson. I am the Reverend Dr. Nancy Hitt. I will be your service associate today. Our program is based on UU Principles 1 and 6, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. We hope you discover new ways of living out these principles in the course of your experience here with us now. Here is what you need to know about what is happening at Westside this week. This past Monday, 14 of us gathered online and held a Zoom meeting titled On Racism. For an hour and a half, we had a lively discussion about both the issue of racism and the proposed 8th principle addressing racism and all other forms of oppression. No conclusions were reached other than that we need to have a lot more conversations about this. Expect to hear a lot more about these things in the future. If you have not already had a chance to see the new Little Free Library on our church property, take a drive and come on by and see it. It's a COVID-safe activity whether you've had your vaccination yet or not. Michelle Poyani designed and built it, and she and Steve installed it. If you are viewing this video on Sunday, March 21st, remember that our town hall meeting is scheduled for today at 12:30. You should have received a link in your email for it. We will be voting on our budget for 2021 and celebrating our UU Chocolate Communion. So bring your chocolate to the meeting, any kind. Milk chocolate, dark chocolate, white chocolate, sugar-free, gluten-free, just bring chocolate. Thank you. Please join me now as we light our chalice. If you have a personal chalice or a candle at home, you may light it at any time as we speak the words on your screen together. May our chalice light illuminate the darkness of our spirits that causes us to draw lines that leave people out. May its warmth soften our hearts and inspire us to bring everyone in. Shalom and amen. Let us affirm our aspirations together. Life is a gift. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Shalom. Please join me now in a moment for centering. Sit back comfortably wherever you are. Uncross your ankles, knees, wrists. Close your eyes if you are comfortable doing so, or choose a focal point for your gaze. Let your mind go blank. Set stray thoughts aside for another time. Focus your attention on your breathing. Breathe slowly and deeply, filling your belly with air, and then releasing it slowly through your nose, in and out, and in and out, and in. Continue to breathe deeply and fully as you relax into your breathing. And now, let your mind's eye show you a time when you knew you belonged, fully and completely, to your family, or your friends, or your class, or your work team. Identify a time when you felt affirmed and wanted, that who you are was cherished, and revel in that feeling. Revel in the rightness of that belonging. As you return your focus to your breathing, bring the glow from that experience with you, and breathe in and out, and in and out. And when you are ready, open your eyes. Shalom and blessed be. Please join me in a time of sharing our joys and concerns. If you have a candle to light at home, draw it closer to you now, being careful to be safe with the open flame. You may light your candle at any time, especially as we light our last candle here. For each of the joys and concerns that we name, we will light a candle, celebrating our joys and supporting our concerns. By this, we share our love and concern for our community and the world we live in. We light a candle of joy that our own New Mexico Congresswoman, Deb Haaland, has been confirmed as Cabinet Secretary for the Department of the Interior. She is the first Native American to hold such a position. We light a candle of concern for the victims in Atlanta shooting that targeted Asian Americans. We hope for healing for the wounded and comfort for the families and friends of the deceased. We light a candle of joy for the unanimous confirmation of Katherine Tai as U.S. Trade Representative. She is the first Asian woman to serve in this capacity. We light a candle of joy for Caitlyn Jenner's work on The Masked Singer on behalf of transgender kids. We hope her costume of the Phoenix becomes a prophetic image for transgender people. And we light our last candle for all the joys and concerns, both personal and those happening in the world around us, that still remain in our hearts and minds. We light this red candle as a witness to honor the struggle and the lives of victims of racial violence. May our memories inspire change and growth toward a world of justice and equity for all. Shalom.
Hello. This cat says, "You're always welcome." The cat's secret to agreeability: walk around as if the whole world adores you. The whole world becomes your lap. Go lie in it. Now this kitty says, love your enemies, even if they can be real snakes in the grass. Seeing a bird fly into a window, which started the dog barking and waking the baby, and making the human throw the dog outside, at which time I snuck out and found the bird, as well as the realization that everything in life truly does happen for a reason. If you meet someone or something with whom you do not see eye to eye, or scale to whisker, try to think about what you two have in common. Let's say you happen upon a real snake in the grass. Just remember that you actually aren't that different. You both love mice. You both hate having your tail stepped on. And you both are known to hiss. Not to mention, you both love sunning yourselves. If we focus on what we have in common with our enemies, it will help us forget how delicious they are.
In our Moment for All Ages today, I would like to introduce you to a woman named Marian Anderson. Here is her story. Singer Marian Anderson showed a lot of talent as a young child, but her family could not afford to pay for formal voice training. Members of her church congregation raised funds for her to attend a music school for a year, and in 1955 she became the first African American singer to perform as a member of the Metropolitan Opera in New York City. Marian Anderson was born on February 27, 1897 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The oldest of three girls, Anderson was just 6 years old when she became a choir member at the Union Baptist Church, where she earned the nickname Baby Contralto. A contralto voice ranges from tenor to mezzo-soprano. Her father, a coal and ice dealer, supported his daughter's musical interests, and when she was 8, he was able to buy her a piano. With the family unable to afford lessons, the prodigious Anderson taught herself. When she was 12, her father died, leaving her mother to raise her 3 still young girls. Her mother went to work caring for children and cleaning in a large department store. Her father's death, however, did not slow down Marian's musical ambitions. She remained deeply committed to her church and its choir, and she rehearsed all the parts, soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, in front of her family until she had perfected them. Her commitment to her music and her range as a singer was so impressive to her choir that the church banded together and raised enough money, about $500, to pay for Anderson to train under Giuseppe Borghetti, a respected voice teacher. And in 1909, $500 was a lot of money. During her 2 years of study with Borghetti, Marian won the chance to sing at the Louison Stadium in New York after entering a contest organized by the New York Philharmonic Society. Other opportunities soon followed. In 1928, she performed at Carnegie Hall for the first time. She eventually embarked on a tour through Europe thanks to a Julius Rosenwald scholarship. By the late 1930s, Marian Anderson's voice had made her famous on both sides of the Atlantic. In the United States, she was invited by President Franklin D. Roosevelt and his wife Eleanor to perform at the White House, the first African American ever to receive this honor. Marian sang many different kinds of music, from classical music to spirituals. Her stage presence was described as commanding. However, despite all of her success, not all of America was ready to receive her talent. In 1939, her manager tried to set up a performance for her at Washington, D.C.'s Constitution Hall. The owners of the hall, the Daughters of the American Revolution, informed Anderson and her manager that no dates were available. That was a lie. The real reason for turning Anderson away was a policy put in place by the DAR that committed the hall to being a place strictly for white performers. When word leaked out to the public about what had happened, an uproar ensued, led in part by Eleanor Roosevelt, who invited Anderson to perform instead at the Lincoln Memorial on Easter Sunday. In front of a crowd of more than 75,000 people, Marian Anderson offered up a riveting performance that was broadcast live for millions of radio listeners. Over the next several decades of her life, Anderson's stature continued to grow. In 1961, Marian Anderson performed the national anthem at President John F. Kennedy's inauguration. 2 years later, Kennedy honored the singer with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The Presidential Medal of Freedom is an award bestowed by the President of the United States to recognize people who have made, and I quote, an especially meritorious contribution to the security or national interests of the United States, world peace, cultural, or other significant public or private endeavors. The Presidential Medal of Freedom and the Congressional Gold Medal are the highest civilian awards of the United States. After retiring from performing in 1965, Marian set up her life on her farm in Connecticut. In 1991, the music world honored her with a Grammy Award for Lifetime Achievement. Her final years were spent in Portland, Oregon, where she'd moved in with her nephew. She died there of natural causes on April 8, 1993, at the esteemed age of 96. And there you have the story of an amazing Black woman whose talent won her some of the most prestigious awards in her field. She is the first African American woman to sing at the Metropolitan Opera Company and the first African American woman to sing at the White House. It is a story of an exceptional woman who broke racial barriers and was admired and respected by many people in many countries, for which we can all be grateful. Marian Anderson is the epitome of both Black History Month, last month, and Women's History Month, this month, now. The music at the beginning and the end of our service today is sung by Marian Anderson. Shalom. Your gifts of love and commitment enable us to carry on. They pay for our lights and water and building, and they pay the salaries of our staff. Without the resources you provide, we would be unable to do these things. Thank you for your loyalty and your generosity. Shalom.
Caste is the title of a book written by Isabel Wilkerson and published in April 2020. And it's the title of my sermon. I intend to tell you some of what she says and not give you a book review, except for 2 points. One, the facts she presents flow like a novel, not like the more structured way of even my favorite nonfiction writers. And two, the one difficulty that I find in the book is that because Black, Native American, and often, too often, recently, Chinese people, that is, colored people, are relegated to the lowest caste in America. It is sometimes difficult to keep discussions of caste separate from color, although Wilkerson works very hard to do so. I'm going to ask a series of questions and then answer them. What does the title of this book mean? A caste system is an artificial construction of fixed and embedded ranking of human values that sets the presumed supremacy of one group against the presumed inferiority of other groups on the basis of ancestry and other immutable traits. Traits that are often ascribed life and death meaning in a hierarchy favoring the dominant caste, whose forebears designed it. A caste system uses rigid, often arbitrary boundaries to keep the ranked grouping apart, distinct from one another and in their assigned places. And in the American caste system, the sign of rank is what we call race, the division of humans on the basis of their appearance. In America, race is the primary tool for caste. But Wilkerson points out, caste and race are neither synonymous nor mutually exclusive. Race is what we can see. Caste is the powerful infrastructure that holds each group in its place. Caste is fixed and rigid. Race is fluid and superficial. Whoever fit the definition of white at whatever point in history was granted the legal rights and privileges of the dominant class. My next question. What caste systems does Wilkerson talk about? Wilkerson tells us that there are caste systems throughout the world, but she focuses on the caste systems in India and the United States, and what was a caste system in Nazi Germany. Some of the details in the Indian caste system that she tells us about are, in India, it is people's surnames that may most readily convey what caste a person is in. The Indian caste system is part of the Hindu religion and is an elaborate fretwork of thousands of subcastes. The four main varnas or groups are, starting from the top, the Brahmin, which I can pronounce, and the next two, which I haven't learned how to pronounce, but I'll say are Kshatriya and Vaishya, and I can spell them for you sometime. And the excluded fourth, known as the untouchables, or the Dalits. Dalits must act in a subservient manner toward higher castes. And in some places in rural India, Dalits cannot walk on the same streets as Brahmins. And Dalits who have PhDs and are associated with prestigious universities still retain their caste and often find it difficult to associate with people in higher castes. Buddhists, Muslims, and Christians are not in the caste system in India. Next question. What does Wilkerson say about the Nazi caste system? Well, I was shocked to read that the Nazis learned from our caste system. And here are some examples. The 1934 meeting of men debating how to turn the Nazi ideology into law, what later became the Nuremberg laws, put the United States and what they could learn from it as the first item on their agenda. A racial slur that the Nazis adopted in their campaign to dehumanize Jews and other non-Aryans, the word Untermensch, meaning subhuman, came to them from a New England geneticist who wrote about white supremacy and later sat in on Nazi sterilization trials. Hitler praised the United States' near genocide of Native Americans and the exiling to reservations of those who had survived. In their search for prototypes of white-dominated countries, the Nazis' overwhelming interest was in the classic example of the United States. The Nazis wondered how the United States had managed to turn its racial hierarchy into rigid law, yet retain such a sterling reputation. A young Nazi tasked with compiling a table of U.S. race laws was confounded by the lengths to which America went to segregate its population. The segregation into different schools for white and black children, the requirement of most states that race be given on birth certificates, and many states segregating waiting rooms, train cars, streetcars, buses, prisons, and jails. Nazi leaders were fascinated with America's habit of assigning humans to categories by fractions of perceived ancestry. Nazis learned that in their miscegenation laws, Texas and North Carolina had an, quote, association clause, end quote, in their marriage bans that said that an ambiguous person would be counted in the disfavored group, that is, the black group, if they had been married to or had been known to associate with people in the disfavored group. And thus, Hitler came up with a law for the protection of German blood and German honor, which defined someone who had 3 Jewish grandparents as a Jew and banned marriage and intercourse outside of marriage between Jews and Germans. But because the Nazis found it too harsh, they did not include in their Nuremberg laws the one drop of blood defining race that they found in the United States. Next question. What are the 8 pillars of caste that Wilkerson describes? 1. Divine will and the laws of nature. Indians ascribed their caste system to the gods. Many American slaveholders and later racists ascribed their position of dominance to God. 2. Heritability. You were born into a certain caste and remained in it for the rest of your life. 3. Endogamy enforces caste boundaries by forbidding marriage outside of one's caste, forbidding sexual relations, and even the appearance of romantic interests. I add, however, that this did not prevent white slaveholders from raping their black slaves, nor did it prohibit Thomas Jefferson's long affair with his slave, Sarah Heming. Purity, number 4, purity versus pollution, which retains the supposed purity of the dominant caste from pollution by the lower caste. In India, this included lower caste people having to walk as many as 90 paces behind upper caste people, and having to prostrate themselves upon the ground if a Brahmin passed, so that his, quote, foul shadow, end quote, might not defile the holy Brahmin. In the United States, it included, well into the 20th century, the barring of African Americans from white beaches, and enforcing blacks to walk on the opposite side of the street of whites in many of our southern towns. Just as Dalits were forbidden from the waters of the Brahmins, and Nazis forbade Jews from Aryan waters. The United States created a system based on racial absolutism, the idea that a single drop of African blood, a single drop of African blood could taint the purity of someone who might otherwise be considered in the dominant class. Number 5, occupational hierarchy, the relegating of African Americans to the dirtiest and most menial jobs, and even after acquiring an education, to teaching, and I excuse both of us, and ministry. But that's what Wilkerson said. Although African Americans in the United States and Jews in the Nazi Germany were used for the entertainment of the dominant class. 6, dehumanization and stigma. Dehumanizing the group dehumanizes and stigmatizes every individual in it. Jews under the Nazis and African Americans in the United States were subject to gruesome medical experimentation, and they built the walls that often imprisoned them, often dying in the process. 7, terror as enforcement, cruelty as a means of control for infractions. Nazis used a nominal 25 lash limit, but Americans, 400. Native Americans were occasionally skinned and made into bridal reins. They were flogged, hung, and burned, and still are being killed in other ways. And that's true of blacks in our country also. 8, inherent superiority versus inherent inferiority. For a long time, black actors and actresses in the United States had to play subservient roles and speak in ways that were very different from the way they did in their real life. For many years, even after slavery ended, African Americans had to totally submit to the dominant class. Okay, those are the 8 characteristics, the 8 pillars that of caste that Wilkerson tells us about. And then she says, where does class fit in? Class is a measure of one's standing in society, marked by education, income, and occupation, as well as accent, taste, and manners. It is something one can work into or out of. And then, what happens when lower caste people rise above upper caste people? If a lower caste person rises above an upper caste person, the natural human response from someone weaned on their caste's inherent superiority is to perceive a threat to their existence. Spiritual, emotional, psychological, and economic. The symbolism of Obama's election was a profound loss to white status. For many, the ability of a black person to supplant the racial caste system was the manifestation of a nightmare which would need to be resisted. That sense of fear and loss, however remote, brought to the fore for many whites a sense of commonality, attachment, and solidarity with their racial group, a sense of needing to band together to protect their place in the hierarchy. An entire machinery moved into place upon the arrival of the first head of state from the subordinate caste system. This included and includes the T, meaning taxed enough already, party, the birthers, labeling the Obamas simians, the changing of election laws to make it harder to vote, and the purging of registration lists. It was as if the caste system were reminding everyone of their place, the subordinate caste in particular, that no matter how the caste, that is C-A-S-T, was reshuffled, the hierarchy would remain as it always has been. But the information that white people in this nation would be outnumbered by people of color by about 2042 really frightened and frightens many white people, lest they lose their dominant caste position. Yet, consciously or not, many white voters were and are, or I shouldn't say yet, I should say yes, consciously or not, many white voters were and are seeking to reassert a racial order in which their group is firmly at the top. Trump was ushered into office by whites concerned about their status. Those susceptible to dominant group status threat will do whatever they can to protect the hierarchy that has benefited them, to retain a sense of dominance and well-being. But the change in demographics might have less of a material effect than imagined. If disparities in wealth are to continue at the common rate, it would take black families 228 years to amass the wealth that white families now have, and Latino families another 84 years to reach parity. Thus, political dominance might still remain in the hands of those who have held it for the entirety of our country's history. Then there's the question of, can a caste system be ended? The brutal one in Germany has been ended, but of course that lasted for only 12 years, while ours is more than 400 years old. We still honor former slave owners with statues, names of schools, and military bases, while the Germans have memorials to those who were killed in the Holocaust by the Nazis, and stumbling stones named for each one killed. Nazi leaders were punished, not glorified. Displaying the swastika is a crime punishable by up to 3 years in prison in Germany, while the Confederate flag still flies in many places in our nation, including in our nation's capital on January 6th. A caste system exists in part because we allow it to exist. Even if we were born into the dominant class, the dominant caste, we can choose not to dominate. And toward the end of the book, Wilkerson asks, will the United States adhere to its belief in majority rule if the majority does not look as it has throughout our history? And I answer, looking at what happened outside and in our nation's capital on January 6th, that question seems to have been answered. Thousands of dominant caste people seeking to overturn the presidential election in which many people of color had voted stormed and defaced our nation's capital, carried Confederate flags hung a noose for Vice President Pence, whom they sought to kill, battered one policeman to death, and mostly on the spot were not harmed by the police or even arrested, although I believe 400 have been subsequently arrested and still more are being investigated. But they were allowed to break many laws on the spot. What a comparison to the people of color killed for doing nothing unlawful and arrested and hurt on the spot for peacefully and lawfully protesting. And about voting, you may have noticed that about 40 states have introduced bills, not laws yet, to restrict the amount of voting that black people can do, although they don't do it in those words, but that's the effect of the way they're gerrymandering and giving laws. And you may have noticed that about 10 days ago, Representative Ron Johnson of Wisconsin said that he never felt threatened by the pro-Trump mob that stormed the Capitol on January 6th, even though he was there. But he knew that they were people that love this country, that truly respect law enforcement, would never do anything to break the law. This is as they were breaking so many laws. And so he wasn't concerned, but that he would have been concerned if the mob had been made up of Black Lives Matter or Antifa protesters. However, as Isabel Wilkerson told us, a caste system exists in part because we allow it to exist. Even if we were born into the dominant class, we can choose not to dominate. And I hope that will be true of all the white people who hear this.
As we do every week, we are encouraging you to respond to the service that you have just experienced. You may post questions and comments about content and format on our website services page or on our YouTube or Facebook page, or you may email either myself or Judy directly. Thank you. Please join me in extinguishing our chalice as we say the words on your screen together. The flame is out, the smoke rises, reminding us gently of all that has gone before. May we embrace what we have seen and heard and direct our lives anew. Shalom.
Some of us wonder how long our land can continue to be one where the worth and dignity of each person and justice, equity, and compassion are not practiced, and where what democracy we have gets threatened more and more each day. Let us remember that the history of our land has not been smooth, and that if we want the ideals of our land and of our faith realized, it is up to each of us to work to make it so. Amen and shalom.